What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for another throwback review. Today I'm taking a look at the sophomore release Under My Skin by pop star Avril Lavigne. Pop rock, a little bit of post-grunge as well. This was definitely more of a kick-ass rocking album than you would have expected for the majority of, pop singers in the early 2000s, whenever boy bands, even girl groups, and just pop vocalists in general weren't exactly doing this, and obviously they're not now, but I feel like this was a strange but also amazing time in music, whenever really anybody could break through to the pop market, and Avril Lavigne proved very successful with her debut album, Let Go. And while I've talked about that album before, I don't really like my review of that whatsoever. I'll redo it someday. I haven't really spoken much about Under My Skin, and it is my favorite, at this point at least, Avril Lavigne album. So let's talk about it. I was into Avril Lavigne before I even really knew who she was. I saw an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. She was on there, and I had a little bit of a crush, not gonna lie. So that definitely helped, and I checked out more of her music, and I was just really into the vibe. You know, at a time in music, whenever people were very judgmental, I think, towards men or boys who would listen to pop, and especially in the environment that I grew up in, I simply didn't care. It wasn't until years later in high school that I fully got into the full-length album, and it's something that definitely surprised me. And if you look at this album's credits, you'll see Don Gilmore and Butch Walker did a lot of the production here. You'll recognize those names, and you're like, oh, Avril Lavigne, da-da-da-da-da. Well, Don Gilmore and Butch Walker are two of the bigger names in rock music, so I think that speaks volumes of the music and its quality right there. Lavigne also writes the majority of her own lyrics, which is very admirable and rare, and that's a trait that even through the years she continued to keep. And while I'm not a huge fan of everything that she put out, some of those albums just weren't great in full, like The Best Damn Thing, it was spotty, and definitely wasn't really that huge on Goodbye Lullaby. I still admire that the majority of the songs didn't have a ton of co-writers, and she still took the majority of creative control. Under My Skin sold over 3 million copies in the US, but I still feel like it's one of her underappreciated albums because it came between the huge Let Go, which sold over 7 million in the US, and then The Best Damn Thing, which had her first #1 hit, Girlfriend, that just would not die throughout 2007-2008. And in between, we have this grungy, moody, but honest record that came out. It's called Under My Skin, and it, like I said, is my favorite Avril Lavigne release. It had some successful singles like Nobody's Home, which is a great track that was sung for a friend. It's just crying out for help, for somebody saying that you have to help me help you, essentially. And she's talking about maybe why somebody's feeling the way that they do. And there's that connectivity and electric charge in many of this album's lyrics. She was very young when this album came out, but she also had words of wisdom and had uplifting things to say a lot of the time whenever her music was being made, and that's something that is missing from pop music these days. Don't Tell Me is another rare moment in pop music because it's Lavigne telling off a guy that's trying to move too quickly, she's not into his sexual advances, and she's shooting him down. And that's something that you just do not see. You don't see songs being sung about this subject matter, especially not hit songs. Yet here we are, 2004, Avril Lavigne coming out with this song called Don't Tell Me. It's a moment that I really, really like because it's got some great guitar and piano moments that lead up to the chorus, and then there are some big choruses on this album, and I think a lot of that was done by her band, obviously, and Butch Walker, Don Gilmore. They know how to make that flooring chorus. But at the center of it all, we have Avril Lavigne and her powerful voice and her powerful message. I love the grunginess of much of this music. Together, you can hear it in the chorus and the way that it builds up, but it also combines other energies like pop and rock, and that grunge movement of the 90s had obviously kind of died out, but the post-grunge feeling didn't feel unnatural for her. Her voice fits rock music very, very well. You can see that immediately right on this very album. Take Me Away, the opener that definitely roars just like the opener on Let Go did. One of my favorite moments was Losing Grip, and this is another one that starts the album off on the right foot. And then we have some very catchy moments like He Wasn't, and then the bonus track, which is great, just a punk rock song that was on the Princess Diaries 2 soundtrack. It's a Spotify and iTunes bonus track called I Always Get What I Want. a lot of fun on this album, but also some very serious moments. Like, I don't know, do you remember Don't Tell Me? And obviously My Happy Ending is another one right there that deals with something topical in a more lighthearted manner. It is serious. It is something that feels like a conversation, though, and that's what I always liked. It's easy to access. Lavigne's voice knows whenever it can soar and whenever it needs to be a bit more restrained, and she hits all of the octaves here on this album. And for slower moments, she does a great job, like on How Does It Feel? Just kind of a delicate, fragile tune that has some nice piano, aided by a little bit of a string section, and then we have the closing moment to the standard edition, Slipped Away, which is heart-wrenching. It was written for her grandfather, who passed away while she was on tour in '03, and it's something where she looked back and she was like, I missed it. I missed the last moment that I had with my grandfather, potentially. I couldn't be by his side because I was out doing what I love, yes, but there's always going to be a trace of regret to her. So I can definitely get on board with a track like this, especially whenever it's done so earnestly, and you can hear the hurt in her voice. There's a couple of moments that do feel kind of formulaic, like I don't dig them as much because you know that Lavigne has the potential for so much more, like Who Knows, for example. It's there, it's fine, it doesn't really move me in any way. It's just one of those tracks where she's kind of selling this message of mediocrity. You know, not mediocrity in the sense that, oh, you should be just the middle of the road, but no, like we've heard this before, and this isn't doing anything to move the envelope forward. Two songs I want to mention before I go today, two of my favorites on this album that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm saving some of the best for last. I love Freak Out. It's such a well done song just because it is a lot of fun, but it also has a message of just like, don't let things get to you. Freak out for a moment, but regain your composure, be yourself, and you're gonna get through to the next day. It's something that I feel like a lot of teens these days could definitely learn to handle themselves a little bit better if they had music that was speaking to them maybe more in this regard without being too silly or over the top, because now you got all these fuckboys walking around listening to Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, and brah, and all these other things, and all of the girls listening to whatever they listen to. I don't even know what teenage girls listen to these days, but this just feels more natural, and I know I'm getting preachy here, but I love this track, and it's just more down to earth than most pop that you hear these days, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And one other song that I have to give a mention to is Forgotten, because it's one of my favorite Avril Lavigne songs. You will see my top 10 Avril is coming out very, very soon, probably, hopefully by the end of November. But this song Forgotten is just a blast and a rush. It's something that is very different and unique on this album, Under My Skin, and in her discography, period. This song has kind of an underlying texture, like you know that there's some pent-up feelings, some aggression, and it starts off slow. There's some instrumentation that swells and builds, the guitars, the pianos, and the dark vibe of the song, and the ooh that opens it. It shuffles in slowly, but rest assured, this is not a slow song. You hear that slamming chorus, and where she just really lets it go with Have You Forgotten Everything? She just cries out, saying whatever this relationship was, whatever this friendship was, it was falling apart, and she's like, I'm not as dumb as you think I am. And this one is a powerhouse to be reckoned with. Singles like My Happy Ending truly hold up. What a catchy bop of a song, and even some of the deep cuts like Together, Fall to Pieces, Freak Out, and obviously Forgotten are still hitting me all these years later. This is by no means a perfect album, but it is my favorite album by Avril Lavigne, and I'm going to give this a strong 4 out of 5. It's held up over the decade, the past actually 13 years at the time of reviewing this, and that's really crazy to me because I feel, one, very old because I was 12 when this came out, but also just because I have a lot of memories connected to specific songs here, and I'm very grateful for that. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. I hope you're digging the throwback reviews that I'm trying to do every single week now, at least every other week at the very least. And be sure to drop a like on the video, donate on Patreon at that top link if you're able to. What other throwback reviews would you like to see me do? Sound off in the comment section down below, upvote some of the ones that you like, and I'll be sure to take a look at them. If you would like to go directly to my Patreon to support, it's this annotation in the corner right here, another Avril Lavigne review right here, and another recent pop video right over here. All of my socials in the description, and I'll see you very soon right here on ARTV.